Okay, I believe we are live. So thank you so much for all the participants who are slowly joining us. And we are in for a treat today. Dane is with us. He's the CEO of LEADR. You're also a host of the Future of Teamwork podcast, where I had the privilege of being your guest. So before we start, Dane, and jump into the all the details about a future of work, I want to just share the why behind like this conversations. I already told you before we actually go live that we see that leaders are very overwhelmed today. They need to perform, they need to transform. They're just somehow stuck in the past, now, future. So for me, like my goal and my objective and my hope is that by having different conversations with diverse like group of thinkers, leaders, tech founders, futurists, we can help first of all build a bit of confidence and then
Yeah.
just share some insights for people to take action. So you're working with leaders all the time and you're talking to them all the time. Tell me, what are some of the challenges that you are hearing from them in today's world?
Yeah, lots of challenges, which I can still say with a smile on my face because I believe we can overcome them all. But a huge one that I think is true of most organizations right now is just this information overload. So
Mhm.
we're always on, whether it's with our devices. AI is only adding to the amount of volume that we're having to deal with now. Some of our team members can turn around a task in about 2 minutes now and send it back to us for review. And we were hoping we'd get a day or so before we had to look at their work. I think our personal lives are far more overwhelming as well. So that's probably the second big challenge. There's information load, but then personally, we're dealing with political issues. We're dealing with a lot of, environmental issues, natural disasters and the like. We're dealing with anxiety in our families, aging parents, substance abuses, anxiety in school age children, and this whole theme of like, well, how are we going to get through this moment? So that plays out, even if it's not directly impacting the tasks of your work, or if your organization's buoyant and going great right now,
Yeah.
that's still there. It's under the surface. So it's something that we've got to work to. And then I do also believe that we have probably the most capable humans at work that we've ever had. So our old models of organizing work are a little bit outdated. And so
Mhm.
we're struggling to keep people activated and engaged at work. I think it's like 79% of people are disengaged at work to some degree. So I think we're all dealing with organizations and ways of working that we can't change overnight. We can't fully disrupt our own businesses, but we're having to think about, well, where is it driving energy and where is it draining energy for our team? So they'd be the
Mhm.
three big themes for me.
I really loved, Dane, the last point that you said around this old ways of working and leading not working. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes deep from a philosophical standpoint of, we traditionally built organizations very command and control. The leaders had the information or the access to the resources, and the
Yes.
workers came in and, you know, they were told what to do. They weren't asked
Hmm.
to think, right? So a lot of our organizations philosophically have been built that way, how we share information, how we design and build things. And then at a more micro level, like tooling, like we've got certain tools that we use, certain business processes that we use, which are now outdated. There are better ways to do it. And when you've got an employee who can go onto Uber Eats and order exactly what they want to eat to arrive at whichever house they're staying at, not just their home, because they might be Airbnb in Madrid or whatever, they've got an expectation on user experience that isn't mirrored in their workplace. So they think they can get things much more quickly, much more customized than is true when you're working in an organization that has a lot of, let's call it technical and social debt.
Yeah. So, you know, this is actually a great point, and I think that when I also started the work, like disengagement, new generation of workforce, they were all some of the terminologies that 10 years ago we were talking about it.
Hmm.
We haven't done much. And now we're facing, like, literally, we're in the transformation time. We're facing like these like big changes. So, and now everyone's panicking. So, how
Yeah.
do you think that if leaders are listening, that they're feeling already overwhelmed, exactly for the points that you're saying? Like,
Yeah.
how can we even think about this? Are there new mindset shifts we need?
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
Yeah. I mean, I get the benefit through the Future of Teamwork podcast of interviewing a lot of thought leaders, a lot of
Yes.
consultants, a lot of platform leaders around what they're doing right now. So I've got my own
Yes.
behaviors and perspectives, and then I'm learning from a lot of other people.
Mhm.
One of the more counterintuitive, I guess, mindsets right now, it ties to growth mindset, but it's this belief that we can go out and become whatever we need to become as leaders and as organizations right now. And actually, there is no rush. And I think the important part is that there is no rush. Everyone feels this
Mhm.
rush, this fear of missing out, this fear of
Yes.
a competitor beating them or a customer leaving because they want something flashier. But the reality is that there's a lot of decision fatigue right now, and good things take time to build. You can't expect to go out there and change something overnight. In fact, it could be damaging and destructive to your team, to your customer experience, or otherwise. So I think just taking a breath and realizing we've got time, and believing that we've been given the opportunity to go where we need to go is probably the first point of realization. And as a leader, if you can find that composure, and
Mhm.
there's some ways to do it, it could be storytelling. I've got some methodology that I've been building around, how do you create a story and share it with people? I think that can help calm people down and help emotionally bring people to a place. It could be your health, actually stopping work, getting offline, going for a walk, taking the kids to the beach, realizing what the essence of life really is, because
Mhm.
work can be overwhelming, and actually sometimes those moments can re-energize us, and we may in fact have our best thoughts when we're out walking the dog, not when we're in the boardroom looking at an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
And then my really big one is outside influence. It's why I am running the podcast, but I think all leaders can benefit right now, not from asking ChatGPT questions, not from scrolling social media for thought leader doses, but from actually going out and talking to real people in their communities, in their industries, in their
Mhm.
domains of interest, and asking some questions. What are you doing? And that might be asking a friend who's a chef when you run a professional services business. It doesn't have to be aligned. I think inspiration comes from different places. And once you've done those three things, the story, you've done the health work for yourself, but also for your team. Make space for your team to be managing their own health and energy. And you've gone out and explored those outside influences. I think it becomes much more clear where you can do your work and on what time frame you should do it.
Mhm. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights, because definitely there is what we call FOBO, like the fear of becoming obsolete. And I think that these like leaders constantly say, okay, what should we do? And it's interesting because like I talked to a few technologists to say that, and many leaders, they feel the pressure that they need to integrate AI. They need to, whereas sometimes maybe the solution to our problem is not technology. It might be
Correct.
something else. You know what I mean? So just understanding and leaving that pressure with like what you've shared. And I have to say that I couldn't agree more with the idea of human connections,
Mm.
because this is what will be left of us in the few years from now, that we
Yeah.
just, those human connections is what really can keep us grounded and bring like a bit of clarity to our work.
Clarity, yeah, absolutely. Clarity, energy, innovation. Like the human connection is our single point of competitive advantage over technology. And the way I like to look at business is thanks to one of my mentors, Ian McDonald, who did a lot of work on system leadership theory, is that there's three components of any business. There's the social, there's the technical, and then there's the commercial. And so the technical is changing really fast. And that will drive changes in the commercial realm because, certain things will become cheaper to build and make thanks to AI or 3D
Exactly.
printing or whatever it is. So technical and commercial is moving. But social, we've never actually done a very good job socially of building our
Mhm.
businesses. We all talk about culture, we all talk about teamwork, but there aren't many companies that can truly say year on year they've built a healthy and high performing team that sustains market cycles and new product launches and everything else.
Mhm.
So right now, I think we can lean into the social. And to your point on technology not necessarily being the go-to answer for everything, the silver bullet.
Yeah.
Too many people, the MIT study just showed this recently, 95% of generative AI projects, pilots are failing. Too many people are rushing to the technology to solve today's problem, where actually, if we rethink how we're socially organizing our teams and our workplaces, we
Mhm.
may come up with better problems to solve with AI, and we may actually come up with some problems that we can solve just through putting some smart humans around the table and asking them for what they think could work.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. But you touched something that, like me and you, that we've been in this like industry in this field for many years, we know, and that is not prioritizing cultures.
Mm,
like,
yeah,
like and to your point, we are dealing with lots of 50s and 60s leadership
yeah,
styles, and I constantly think that we were always somehow could get away with it. Like leaders could still embrace those older hierarchical, like really power dynamics within their teams to do the work. COVID happened, some stuff changed, but how can we, help really leaders just change this perspective that the culture that we talked about forever and you always ignored it or said it's a nice to have or you interpreted maybe like wrongly for many
yeah.
cases now would be one of your biggest advantages in like succeeding in the future of work. Like how could we create that mindset shift, do you think?
I think going back to your views on growth mindset and abundance
Yes.
theory, that's where we need to lean because for too long we've built organizational change around fear. The burning platform, for example. Hey, AI is coming to replace our jobs. We've got to do this. I
Yes.
think we've actually got to go the other way and say, from an abundance standpoint, we've got people and we've got customers and we've got communities that we participate and we've got vendors that are all human, right? And now is our chance to grab culture and make it that competitive advantage in the future. Let's let our culture shape some of our decisions
Mhm.
around how we run our business, how we retool, how we chase new
Mhm.
customers or find new vendors. Because historically, culture has been very fluffy, but in an age where the technical and commercial elements are becoming more commoditized and more uh, dictated to us by some changing market conditions or technology advancements, I think getting into the social is really where it's at. Now, for a lot of leaders who are later in their career and they're sitting there going, well, this thing's been working. I only need a couple more years left. That's a problem, like, because change is going to
Mhm.
be tough. It's going to take work and growth for everyone. But for leaders who are sitting there saying, hey, I can see what we can do in the next 10, 20 years. This is worth starting to invest in.
Mhm.
I think there's ways to do that, not by mass change. I don't think you need to go and roll out and say, we're totally changing the way we are as a business,
Yes.
but you can start injecting what I call workouts, like small doses of inspiration and activity and activation in your teams to start saying, well, what might it look like? How might we build our culture so that we're better at serving customers, or we're better at attracting and retaining employees, or we're better at innovating? So I
Mhm.
think I think that's really where they need to go is what can I build towards rather than am I just doing this to maintain the status quo?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it really reminds me of one of the guests on this LinkedIn Lives a few weeks ago
Hmm.
that he was just saying that when we look at culture, is like we're looking at three time frames, like past, now, and like present and future.
Yeah.
And so many of us, to your point, would just say, okay, what has been working? Okay, that we know it. What are we doing now? What do we need to do now? And who do we want to become?
Yes.
But one of the challenges that I see a lot with leaders is that they're very overwhelmed with performing and delivering
Yeah.
within the old system. So I love your idea of small workouts, actions. Tell me a bit about that because looks like that it's not going to be overwhelming people. It will
Correct.
be just small nuggets of like additions that can make actually a big change.
Yeah, and so it's that, there's a lot of cognitive load on those leaders, like you suggest. So we only have so much time that we can put towards that future state right now. And as I shared at the beginning of this conversation, we've never had a more capable workforce. Like the people on our teams are brilliant. They've got, I don't care about what generation they're part of. They've got access to technologies. They're exposed to so much more information and experiences. They can solve a lot of problems that we've traditionally not allowed them to because we pigeonhole them into a graphic designer job description or whatever it might be, a chemical engineer, but that doesn't mean they can't solve other problems. So I think the trick is to build a workout. For example, we use one called the energy wheel, which is, hey, let's go and look at what parts of our business process are creating energy and which parts are draining energy for us. And that's just a quick exercise. It's a diagnostic, but it creates a prompt for some conversation. Oh, it's interesting that three of our team members are getting energy from this and five of them are losing energy from this. How are we experiencing this singular process
Mhm.
differently? What might
Mhm.
that tell us? So all of a sudden we might have done an hour's work and we were curious and we learned something as a team. We created some shared perspective, and we created some connection. Like that's really important. Like the members of that team actually got to do something that wasn't the grind of their tasks. And as humans, we want to be connected and we want to matter. We want our work to be significant and important to each other. So I think there's a perfect example of a very simple exercise. You can do it on a whiteboard. You don't need a tool, and you get rolling.
And I love this, Dane. Thank you so much for sharing because it's really around that awareness and that intentionality. Like that, we
Yeah,
just think that this will be something that will benefit us. Because I'm sure that so many leaders and teams spend hours going to have a lunch, talking about things like doing social activities
yeah,
that doesn't bring that connection, that doesn't bring that awareness about what's
no,
working and what's not. And it cannot be like, a prompt towards change. Whereas what you're saying is that you are really intentional as a leader to see what's working for me. It's not necessarily something that works for others. And how can we just evaluate that and assess that
yeah,
within our teams?
yeah,
Absolutely,
absolutely.
actually. Yeah, absolutely love this. Because, for us is also the same thing. And I understand it totally. When we go to our leaders and we actually give our, like, programs, sometimes they say that, but we don't have time for it. Can we do this in 2 days? And I said, but it's like going to the gym. You use the analogy of like workout. You
Yeah,
cannot go to the gym for 2 days and then like eat burger
be
for like
healthy.
3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
how come I just kill myself like, doing like, these exercise and workouts at the gym. Like there is that consistent behavioral change that we want to commit to it. And if
yes,
you're not up for it, definitely nothing will change. Something else that I want to actually bring to this is we're talking a lot about leaders, but obviously there might be so many like employees actually listening to us. Me and you looks like we have a very something in common, and that is our love for teams. Like
yes,
we think that individuals are individuals, leaders, and then we've got the organizational level, but you and me, I think we believe that team level is where we can have that maximum impact. We can actually create that ideal culture and dynamic. What would be the role of employees, just a normal person that
yeah,
necessarily doesn't have that power within the dynamic? what are some of the examples that they can do to somehow say that, you know what, we need actually a bit, like we need to boost our culture?
Yeah, so I was actually just had on my podcast today Mita Malik, who's just written a great book, The Devil Emails at Midnight. What good leaders can learn from bad bosses. It's so captivating, and as an employee
Oh
team
my
member, I
goodness,
totally
only
recommend reading
devils.
it.
Oh my
Um,
God, only devils.
one,
What was it
the
again?
devil emails at midnight. It's a great title, so captivating. And I've
Yes.
been the devil. I've done the emailing too at midnight. I'm sure many of us have.
Oh yes,
Um,
raising my hand here too. Yes.
so one thing that she shared today, as part of sort of her stories on bad leaders and the effect on teams, is that culture's very much the product of the worst behaviors that we accept. Okay, so I know it's traditional for employees who feel disengaged to, not bring their best to work, and that's really sad because we all deserve to be able to willingly give of our best at work. So I think one of the reframes is, as an employee, as a team member, to say, I need to get better at being a team member, because actually, as a team member, I can shape culture. I can identify bad behaviors and I can correct those behaviors. So it's a little bit of upwards management, but it can be peer to peer, it can be across functions. And there's a few key tricks there. So one of them is demanding feedback. Like,
Yes.
don't hand work over and not ask for feedback. I know people are very challenged when it comes to giving feedback well, so you might invite something that's a little bit painful at first, but we all need to practice that muscle of demanding feedback and giving feedback, because that's what's going to help us learn about what took someone's energy away. And I think one of my tips there is, don't ask for judgment. Ask what gave you energy about this work that I handed over to you. What did you find, was draining energy or confusing or frustrating for you? But make it about the experience of the work that you're handing off to each other rather than the quality of the work. And I think that's a good
Love
tip
that.
for demanding feedback. A second one, I think, is to require clarity. So if someone gives you a task, if you're a team member, whether it's a peer or whether it's a boss or someone from another department, don't assume anything. Like, take those
Mhm.
extra few minutes to say, okay, so just to be clear, I'm going to play it back. You'd like me to produce you this report with these 5 variables over this time frame by then, or you'd
Mhm.
like me to go and get a drawing of this component from our engineering provider so that we can, review it. But get really clear on that, because as you build clarity for yourself, you're likely building clarity for your teammate or your leader, because they're busy and they're just like, hey, Nogol, can you just go and do this? But they haven't thought about the what's next or what they're going to do with it or why they really need it. They're moving things off their
Yes.
desk. So they'd be the two that I would go to.
And I love both of them, especially like the feedback one that you said, that don't focus on the judgment, but more on the experience and
Yeah.
also the clarity. Like we talk a lot about this, that people leave meetings and they really don't know what they were
Nope.
supposed to do, what are some of the action plans, because there is not enough time spent to debrief, to recap. And I think, but then this is, I think, the challenge that like teams and leaders are facing is that we need to be quicker, we need to be faster, we need to
Yeah.
be more efficient, because it's just we're constantly have to make this happen, whereas there are certain grounding experiences that will
Yeah.
actually impact the performance and the work that we're going to create together. And
Yeah.
that, and and then then my next question is around, like, obviously psychological safety, we already discussed this. Like, I love this idea of like asking for feedback, because it's not risky, because it's less riskier than offering feedback, because offering
Yes.
feedback could be perceived in so many different ways and all of that, but whereas like asking
It's
feedback
a
is
great
really like,
point.
it's a very good way. But then we see that, we already discussed it on your podcast, that we see that leaders want to see these small actions or behaviors within their teams. However, they are not necessarily practicing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that idea that, like,
Guilty.
I'm not risking like this.
Yeah.
So how could we just create that dynamic that only employees are not the ones taking the risk and
Yeah.
integrating these actions or these small moments?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just to double click on what you said there, that asking for feedback is far better than offering feedback unsolicited. So if you can create a culture in your team where everyone asks for feedback, leaders and team members across functions, then you're already winning half of the battle, right?
Yes.
So there's a big piece here on psychological safety, getting to your point, which to me is the leader goes first. And lots of people have written about it. Vulnerability, Brené Brown will talk to that heavily as well, is essential. And I think, in my opinion, as leaders, we all too often talk about the business and we don't talk enough about ourselves. So I think that's where you can get vulnerable. And it's not, bring your whole self to work, share everything that's going on in your life, right?
Yes.
But
Exactly.
just as a leader, two really good tips. One is to come into your team on a periodic basis and share something that you're working on, not a task, but you're working on in your
Mhm.
leadership style. For example, hey, Nogol, it's been great working with you this last few months. I just wanted to let you know I appreciate how you put up with all of my crazy ideas. I know I'm very,
I love
motivated by shiny
it.
things, and I know I bring some things to you that distract you at times from the mission at hand, and I'm working on that. But I just wanted to let you know I appreciate what you've done, and I'd like to invite you. If I bring something forwards next week that you find is distracting or is unclear, just please challenge me. I'm working on it. I need your help to be accountable to that.
I love that. But I mean, and again, and I'm just thinking of the leaders that I've worked with. And I think especially the younger ones, so many of them probably are going to be open to that. Is just this idea that they add this to their work and
Yeah,
add this to their agenda. Because again, like when we do the work with
yeah,
teams, like someone actually gave me this analogy. I think it was Brooke. Like, thank you so much for that because it was very interesting. Was that it's like a Heinz, like sauce. When you just is a vinegar sauce or salad sauce, like when you just or is a craft like salad sauce. When we are doing the work, we're shaking things. And
yes.
obviously there is that awareness. Okay, we're gonna do this, we have to do this. But then when you leave things as is after a few months, like everything starts to separate it again. So the idea is that like how can we bring this awareness to leaders that these small things do have an impact, like they
Yeah,
do create trust and that safety and that collaboration energy.
I think the nice thing about this one, the vulnerability moment, is that it's immediate, it's impactful, it's iterative. You don't have to go out and roll out a huge change. I could walk into a one-to-one with you and just try it, right?
Exactly.
So go try it with your most trusted, longest term team member, for example, and then see what it sparks. And if it sparks something good, do it again. If it doesn't, go try something else. Like I think it's trial and error. So it's a great point. Like we don't want to create a burden of work. We don't want to say, hey, you have to go out and create a town hall to tell everyone what you're working on
No,
every quarter.
no,
It's got to
definitely
be
not.
human
No.
in the connection. The second one actually that I was going to touch on, which I also think solves that same problem of how do we not create more work for leaders, is actually to go in as a leader to your team members and say, hey, Nagol, I've got this challenge right now, and I feel a little bit uncertain about how we're going to solve it. I would like your opinion. Like in 10 minutes, maybe you could just write up how you would approach this problem, what questions you might ask.
Mhm.
I would just really appreciate that thought partnership. So, again, it's just a small dose, it's a small activity.
Yes.
But what it's done is it's building trust because, again, I'm being vulnerable in a real task of work,
Yes.
not in the, hey, this is what I'm working on. But I'm being vulnerable there. Two, I'm showing appreciation and gratitude for you because I'm believing in you being able to help me see a different way through the problem. And three, it creates connection because on top of the gratitude, if you and I then agreed, oh, that thing that you identified in the goal is great, I'm going to go and talk to accounting and see if I can get that data. We've just created some, bonding through
Yes.
actually achieving something together, coming through some adversity together.
And it's actually a definition of creating that psychological safety where you are inviting people for participation. Like
Yeah,
you're literally giving an opportunity. Like you're telling, to your point, you're telling that I don't know, which is like
yeah,
the ultimate, like I think confession of like, vulnerability or like just an example of vulnerability.
yeah,
And then you're just saying that, you know what, I'm inviting you for participation, which is exactly, and to
100%.
your point, again, I think so many leaders would think that, but that means that like we have to follow their ideas. No, that's not the case. You are
No,
just you're inviting for participation, for collaboration, and that doesn't mean that you are like forced to go with their ideas. You just like brainstorming, you know,
correct, correct. One
because
thing that I will say, as a student of this space and as an operating leader, being a CEO of a business, is that when you're listening to these conversations with Nogol, with myself, with other leaders, you can see like, oh, it makes sense when you're hearing it. And there's 15 things that I could do, and I want to make sure I've got all those tools in my tool bag. The reality is, going back to your original point, like, how do we actually make time for this? So I would just use one tool a few different ways for a while and see what it sparks. And then be consistent in that if it's working, or change and then pick another tool. But don't kind of hit the team with a different tool or methodology every week, because then you might create a whole trail of work that you
yes,
know
it's just a
is
burden.
setting expectations and does become a burden.
And I love this, in like facilitation, sometimes they call it like, what is your 15% goal? And the 15% is that if I want to go and walk every day, the
Yeah,
15% is literally like buying your shoes or putting the shoes at the door. Like this is my first 15%.
I love
And
that.
when we constantly tell people and say, that we know that you're excited, to your point, like you're excited and you say, okay, let's do this, let's do that, do that 15%, but
Yeah,
do it for a few weeks. And, and then just like once you see the impact, you're going to be motivated to continue like doing that.
absolutely. That actually reminds me, we had Dan Pink come and run a conference with us a couple of years ago, and he's got so much great material.
For sure.
I think he gave us 36 points on the day that we could take away. But one of them that I really liked was just add a different question into every one-to-one meeting that you have with an employee. Because you're going to have a one-to-one meeting with an employee, and if you're not, you should. And so that's really healthy for you and your team, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. That's your decision. But if you can create space in that one-to-one so that it doesn't just become a talk about what's going on at work and what tasks we ought to do, but you create space for one question in that meeting, then you're going to build that 15%. You're going to be getting started in this, month on month and consistently.
I love this. This is a great like takeaway, I guess, for anyone listening. That is just those, because again, like I think that unfortunately, even with the personal life, we think that trust and safety and connection happens in like these grand events and these like very like, big things. Whereas
Yes.
they are the majority of time in our relationships, in our personal lives, in our
Oh, yeah.
professional lives. They're really built through these small moments that you either make it or you break it, you ruin, like, like I talk to so many people and we're like really discussing how her dad being sick as an employee or dad dealing with cancer, and the way that the manager or the leader manage that conversation around this like
Yes.
vulnerable topic, either build the trust or literally she's looking for a job,
Yeah.
you know? And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I think it ties into, let's say, the future now, that everyone's talking about this fact that human skills, it will
Mm.
be much more important. What do you see when you think about a skill set for the leaders you're working with, you're hearing, from other leaders and your podcast, what are some of the things that like leaders can start to think of, embrace as a mindset, but also
Yeah.
as a skill set?
I think at a very, very basic level, and whether you talk to a coach or a therapist about this, the important thing about connecting with other people, which to me is the essence of building trust and teamwork and, making sales and building vendor relationships and innovation, you name it. I think it's a huge currency for that, is that you ensure that as a leader or as a team member, you help other people around you that you need to work with to be seen, valued, and heard. That's at its most simple level. That's what it is. That's what you're looking for, and therefore skills that I think leaders should be developing are facilitation skills, coaching skills, teaching skills, training skills, not you know decision making. Like leaders have a primary job in a business to
Yes.
make decisions, to set the direction and the culture,
Mhm.
and we're generally pretty good at that. But if you can then, on top of your decision making, engage those people, make them feel seen, valued, and heard by coaching them through why their feedback didn't contribute to the decision that was made, or by teaching them why you're making a decision to shift market in terms of customer outcomes or shareholder outcomes or team member outcomes. I think that's where the leaders are going to not only create better talent attraction and retention engines for their businesses, but they're going to motivate and activate their team members. And I shouldn't say motivate because team members are motivated when they turn up to work, but they're going to activate their team members around their existing motivations.
Yes. And I think what you're saying, it's exactly the definition of inclusion safety. That is that like, if we want to have innovation, if we want to have collaboration, communication, and creativity,
Yeah.
people need to feel that they can contribute. They are
Yeah.
being seen. They are being heard. Like it's
Yep.
literally exactly like what Timothy Clark actually put out in this like four ladders of psychological safety, that inclusion safety is that really first step
Yeah.
in
Absolutely.
order to like to get there. So let's slowly like wrap up. First of all, I want to just thank you so much. Like I think that our leaders, our employees are leaving with lots of small ideas that I'm sure when you think about this AI and all of that, you think, okay, but they do matter. They're
Yeah.
going to actually build that team dynamic that can go through transformation, that can perform, and that can become future ready
Yes.
for the new world of work. Um, I want to see about like your vision. Like if you're thinking about 2035, like 10 years from
Hmm.
now, what would you hope to see in teams?
I fundamentally hope that we're spending more time and attention on teams, how we measure them, how we create energy within those teams, how we work together, over time, how we design those teams over time. Because I think, and that's at work, but also in the community, because we need that connection, through our sporting organizations, religious institutions, you name it. But I think if we can be doing that, if we can be part of more healthy teams, then we're going to have more impact when we decide to do work. But we're going to come back to our families happier. We're going to have more energy and more capability to bring to bear in our communities, whether that's not for profit work or just being a good upstanding citizen, in the
Yes.
local school district. I think it's just better for all of us. It's going to solve a lot of the problems we're suffering right now.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I just really believe that organizations have much bigger impact than what they produce in their services. Like they are
Yeah.
like they do impact. And I remember like listening to like a podcast or reading something, I don't remember, but it was 2016 or 17, and said that the people that are disengaged, professionals who are disengaged in the workplace, there's a higher chance that their kids at school are being bullied.
Oh, it's so true.
Because it's just so like, when you are disengaged, when you are not being feeling seen or heard, when you're not tapping on your potential, there's a higher
Yep.
chance, like, you're not going to be the best parent that you want to be. and
Or
they're
husband or wife
your
or
husband or
child or
wife or
sister.
child
Yeah.
or
Coach.
citizen. Exactly.
Yeah. I've seen
So
many sports coaches who are disengaged at work, unloading on a poor kid for something that's totally, you know, in bounds in the learning of a sport. But it's that hurt people hurt people.
exactly.
You're right. If you're disengaged at work, we all want to willingly give of our best at work. We want to matter to our teammates, and the faster we learn that and put value behind that, the better we're
Yes.
going to see performance in and out of work.
Exactly. And I totally agree with you. And I think that the more we are using technology to do some of the work that we're qualified,
Hmm.
to do to replace those like, tasks, I think this importance of what is the meaning of work? What do we do? Why do we do the work that we're doing? I
Yeah.
think it's becoming like more and more important. Is there any final note that you want to leave our community with?
Oh, I mean, if anyone's listening today and you might be in the Boston area, we're running our first Healthy Team Summit, October 21st. So we'd love
Awesome.
for you to come along and participate. It'll be very immersive, and we're looking for audience contribution to research and ideas around some of these workouts. And also, like, tune into the future of teamwork. You can listen to Nogol's episode and other thought leaders that I learned from and practitioners that I learned from. So we'll add those to the show notes. And a big thank you to you, Nogol. Like, I love this human mode concept. I do think there's so much value in people creating this space to share information and
Yes.
inspiration. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I also do believe that in a time of transformation, community is like something that you can lean on. And
Yeah.
I feel like, listening to you, like seeing each other on LinkedIn, it's just basically what we need in this
Yeah.
uncertain time so that we can just do this together and just go through it together.
That's it. They said it takes a village to raise a family. I don't know what it takes to build a good organization, but it's more than a village.
Cities and like,
Yeah, that's right.
provinces.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Dane, for joining. And we're going to hope to just talk again very soon.
Thanks, Nigel. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.